All right, here we go. Episode 1 of the Dirt Beers podcast, coming from the Instagram page at Dirt Beers. I'm one of your hosts, Beef or Corby Daniels. I got my co-host Jonathon Howe with me.
Heyo.
And basically, this is just an idea we had based off the Instagram page. We're just two guys that want to share our opinions on dirt racing and what's going on in dirt racing. So basically, we both have backgrounds in dirt racing and in the racing community. Me more as a crew member and working on the cars and just working in the industry. And then Jonathan's well, I'll let Jonathan talk about it, but Jonathan also has things he does in the dirt racing community, which he can tell you about.
Yeah, I'm more on the announcer journalism side of things. I announce Saturday nights at Maryville Speedway up in Canada, where we are. I've announced at the now late Humberstone Speedway. I've had the chance to announce at Ransomville as well. I've written for Inside Track magazine covering dirt racing as well, so I kind of come at it from the perspective of kind of like a lot of you fans, being on the other side of the fence, watching the cars go around, whereas Corby, you've kind of got the experience of being down in the nitty-gritty, working with the cars, with the drivers, with the teams, and two very different perspectives coming together for Dirt Beers. And I think the most important part of Dirt Beers, buddy, I think we gotta have a little cheers to start the episode.
Want a drink?
I like it.
Perfect.
Well, that's
Cheers.
an invitation to all of you out there, too. Crack a beer and come along on the ride with us.
So, yeah, basically, just two guys, love dirt racing, love racing in general. That's what this show is going to be about. We're going to break down the top series that run around the country in the U.S. and in Canada, which would be both World Outlaw Series, sprint cars, and late models. We're going to do some Lucas Oil late model stuff, Super Dirt Car Series, and then the smaller series, where there's news to talk about, drama to talk about, we're going to talk about it, give our opinions on it, and some may agree with our opinions, some may not agree with our opinions, which is fine. Let your voice be heard in the comment section, but we're not afraid to, have a debate about things. But yeah, basically that's what the show's going to be about. We'll talk about all the news, drama, we're going to talk about points, just ride swaps, people losing rides, getting rides, anything and everything. So it should be fun. We're gonna have guests on periodically. We don't know yet, but we're gonna try and have as many guests on as we can from different perspectives, from drivers to crew guys to announcers to series directors to anybody and everybody. We want to just get a full scope of the dirt racing community and just see it from every angle, basically.
Yeah, looking forward to this, man. I have had the chance to cover dirt racing on my own podcast, which you're now going to be a part of the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. We'll talk about that more in that series and really kind of get to kind of narrow in on our hometown scene in that show. But I, for one, have always kind of been, I don't want to say an outsider to this sort of stuff, Corby, but like the bigger series, I just haven't had a chance to keep up with the same way or dive into and invest the way I've wanted to throughout my fandom. I've always just been such a local guy, but now having our own show to talk about the big stuff and the big stories, that's kind of a nice option for us. And I mean, there's no shortage. We're coming off a World Finals weekend for this very first episode. Lots to get into. What do we start with? You want to start with the World of Outlaws and the sprint cars?
Yeah, we'll start with the World Outlaws. Just everything just got wrapped up in Charlotte. The 3 champions were crowned. Pretty much, I know beforehand, so basically a little bit about where I've worked on race cars and stuff. I've crewed for Matt Williamson in Northeast Modifieds, and also now I'm crewing currently on Mike Bowman's sprint cars here in the Northeast. So that's what I have experience with, and with being with Matt, I've been down to the World Finals multiple times. Amazing event. Definitely one to check out if you've never checked it out before. It's definitely a bucket list event for any dirt racing fan, I would say. But yeah, the finals is always, depending on where you are in the points and stuff, it can be very stressful. It can be amazing. It can be terrible. The emotional roller coaster is crazy in Charlotte. But the way I believe they used to do it before, because this year they started on Wednesday. I don't believe they ever have started on a Wednesday before. I always believe it was Thursday start. So, but this year they did the Wednesday, and it was just time. There was no features. It was just times, and I believe they ran just a couple of practice sessions. But it actually did get cut short because of rain. I think they only got through maybe half of what they wanted, and then they rescheduled it to run the rest early Friday. But I mean, there wasn't too much that happened on Wednesday night, but there was always the one guy, not calling him out or anything, but the 17 big block modified Marcus Dingens, he did crash during time trials in the wall. I mean, it happens. I've seen it happen there multiple times before. I've seen Mike Mahaney do it. I've seen other people do it. It's definitely not something that is isolated. But that was probably, I mean, I would say the biggest thing that happened. I don't know if Jonathan, if you caught up any of the stuff on Wednesday before the rain, that was probably the most exciting thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're starting your kind of weekend or your week-long event like this on the back foot by crashing, never a good sign. Obviously, I was kind of locked into how time trials were going to go to try to see if I can get a feel for how things were going to shake out in all the series, really, but even, especially, Super Dirt Car Series, having, being guys based in Niagara, having Matt Williamson kind of be our hometown hero. Obviously, I was pretty locked in on that, how he was going to erase a 15-point gap going into the weekend. That was kind of the main stuff that I was focusing on Wednesday night, was just to see how speeds looked. And whether Matt was going to have a shot. And I think it came out later in the week that they went back to the 2022 notebook. And I think that was a big key to kind of what we saw unfold over the next couple of nights.
Yeah, for sure. That Wednesday is a good time for everybody to see, unload and see this is what I got right now, and then fine tune it from there. Everybody looked good Wednesday. I didn't look exactly at who was fastest, but I mean, as from what I did see, everybody was pretty consistent, and who we thought was going to be at the top was at the top. So, coming into World Finals, you have that. I believe the Super Dirt Car Series was the tightest race going into the weekend. So, you got the Matt versus Matt show, 15 points. You don't know how it's going to shake out. It was that way somewhat. I think the gap was a little bit more going into 2019 when we went there. And I remember being there in 2019, and it was just like, you got to be focused and make sure you're doing everything you can to make sure that this car goes as fast as possible and gain as many points as you can. I mean, a lot of it is up to luck, which, I mean, we're going to talk about here because there was a lot of luck that happened over the weekend. But we can dive into Thursday night. I mean, it came out, I know we're talking a lot about modifieds right now, but the first thing I saw on Thursday was that the 9S had pulled his motor and he was putting in a fresh motor. Apparently this is the motor they run normally at the World Finals. So I saw that and I was like, I mean, could be good, could be bad. You never know what's going to happen. But obviously it didn't work out for him in the feature. I heard apparently it was a gasket on the water pump is the reason that he had to pull off, was the mechanical failure. So that right there just, that just throws yourself in the hole. I mean, he wasn't trying to, obviously, but you never know with these motors, like, anything can happen.
Yeah, and I thought, too, it kind of was... I'm not going to sit here and say it's karma, because I'm not sitting here saying Shepard deserved that. Not at all. No. But in terms of when you look at the seasons and how they were playing out, Matt had that, I think it was an engine failure back at Weedsport kind of earlier in the year, and that really set him back and put him on the back foot to kind of have to chase Shepard down. So this is almost like, okay, we've got an even playing field, kind of, sort of. I know this handed the lead back to Williamson, but when you looked at the statistics, Williamson probably should have been the leader heading into that Thursday night. It's just that Shepard's really good at playing the game, right? Like, I'm not going to dive too much into the actual point system right now, but like when you look at some of the bonuses that get handed out, overall fast qualifier, right? Yep. 5 points can be made there. The top 5 get paid out in heat races in the Super Dirt Car Series, right? Mm-hmm. That stuff makes a difference, and that's kind of how Shepard, without winning features, was able to be 15 points ahead going into that Thursday night. And obviously you have trouble, you have a DNF. It's almost like those two DNFs canceled each other out finally. It's just that Shepard had it at maybe one of the worst times you can possibly have something go wrong, in one of the final 3 events.
Yep. Yeah, it comes down. It's just bad luck, and that happens in racing. You can't predict what is going to happen in the future. But one more modified thing I want to get to before we move on to the other classes is the 111, probably with the best audio clip of the weekend, I believe, on Thursday after his heat race, basically saying he's not scared to put his car on a wall and he's got no points on the line, no friends here. He's just going for the win. And the 111 was bad fast all weekend. I don't know what it is about Charlotte, but every time he gets down there in that thing, it is just motoring.
Yeah, that was cool to see. And I mean, that's a great attitude to have, because that's an attitude of a winner. You have these points battles going on, but there's also 3 really big wins. You want to be a winner at Charlotte. You want to say that you won a race at Charlotte. And
100%.
you go down there with that mindset to at least walk away with some hardware and with a check. That is a lot of fun for us fans to track just as much as the championship battle.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, World Racing Group's done a great job, I believe. I mean, I believe it was 2018 when Matt won his first race down there. I remember it paid $8,000, and now fast forward to now, these races are paying $10,000, $10,000, $15,000 for the modifieds, and on Saturday, the World Outlaws both features are paying $25,000 to win. So like the purses are going up. Not to say that, I mean, cost of everything is going up too, but it's still nice to see the bigger purses, especially at an event like this.
Absolutely. It just makes it that much more of a crown jewel event, right?
Exactly.
Obviously, we, being modified people, we know about Super Dirt Week and the importance of winning there. Obviously, it's not quite the same as when it was at the mile, but still, even at Oswego, you want to win for the double points. You want to win for the prestige of winning Super Dirt Week or winning at Super Dirt Week. And now that World Finals is, getting a prestige of its own, and obviously big purses. It's a great way to make sure that Charlotte stays special as a world final, as an end to your season.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the late models on Thursday. Good action. The late models always put on great races. I love watching them. My biggest thing that I took away from the late models that night was the 9 of Hoffman cutting the points lead in half in one night, which was absolutely crazy. Like, the thing was just flying out there, and it seemed like maybe he was going to pull off the win, but he didn't get there. But it was the thing was motoring, and to cut a points lead in half in one night is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, talk about like showing up at the right time, right? Like, to be able to kind of clutch up like that and put the pressure on. You always want to be on offense. Like, obviously, if you come into a weekend with a 100-point lead or a 90-point lead, and it's like it's not clinched, but it's almost all over, you're probably going to be pretty comfortable. But if you can go out there as the competition and go on offense and send a signal like that where you're taking that big of a chunk out of a point lead this late in the season, that's a real message to be sent, and that it almost kind of worked out for Hoffman. It was, I know, like, obviously the rest of the weekend kind of didn't quite go the way he needed it to, but to send a shot across the bow like that, especially kind of a hometown race for him, obviously being a Mooresville guy, right, nice and close to Charlotte, that's a big moment.
For sure. I mean, like he showed that he was there to go for it. Like, he knew this is it. Like, I gotta buck up now and make a shot at this thing. Yeah, it was incredible to watch. I mean, the features all weekend were amazing. There was racing everywhere. I mean, a lot of people say like the track was very dusty at some points, and the track at some points did take a little bit of rubber, but they did a good job to get it farmed back up and get some passing and racing going. I mean, for a track that really doesn't run that many events during the year, the track surface is, I would say, pretty good. Other than, I mean, especially for the modified guys, they're not used to running the harder tires. Down there, the surface is a lot more abrasive, so they need to run a harder tire into the 400s, 500s, which, I mean, we're going to talk about it later, but I think on the last race, there were some bad tire choices being made, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. For the sprint cars on Thursday, there really wasn't too much action. I didn't have too many notes for them. It was pretty status quo. Everybody was where you thought they would be. Gravel, I think he extended his lead in the points a tiny bit on the Friday, or on the Thursday, sorry. But Friday, we get into Friday, and it all changes up a little bit. We'll start with the modifieds again. You have Shepard the night before, DNF. Matt goes out, finishes third, I believe. Fourth, I believe.
Yeah.
And takes the lead. So from there, it's like, in Matt's head, he's got to be like, well, fuck. Like, I was just behind, now I'm ahead. We got to make sure that we keep this thing up front, because if the 9S is coming and we have a shit night, it could be reversed again,
And what about the opposite mindset for Shepard, where kind of he's been playing defense for, it feels like, a large portion of this late half of the season, and now suddenly you're the one on offense.
Yep.
And, it's one thing to be on the offense when you have 5 wins in the bank or 4 wins in the bank or maybe more like that. But when you've only won one feature on the year, and it's not like Shepard's had a bad year. He's always been there consistently, top 5, top 10, super consistency, kind of just top 5ing the series to death. But now you got to go on offense, and you got to find that pace that you kind of haven't had all year long in terms of being able to go up there and take a win away. I mean, that's got to be a head trip for Shepard, and you kind of saw it there at the end. Like, Matt Williamson, it was like, I think a 10-lap dash kind of thing at the end, I think, is how that race played out. And Shepard really never got it to him in that 10-lap dash. Williamson was the aggressor. He jumped out to that advantage, and he never looked back. And Shepard, I don't think, had... you never know what he had to do, what the team had to do, what parts went back onto that race car. Is it a B-level motor? Is it, was it just the gasket that they replaced? You never really know exactly what they had to do and how that affected the race car. But it just seemed like he did not have the pace to go and take a lead back, take a win back, take the points back that he needed to do.
Yeah, it was... He was definitely behind the 8 ball. Like, as soon as that happens, it's like... It might have been maybe a different story if he could have gone out the first night and won, and then the second night that happened, maybe it would have been a little bit closer. But yeah, just once you get in the hole, it's the same. Once you get in the hole, it's hard to dig out. Like, it's hard to get out of the hole. But yeah, Matt Shepard had to be thinking, like, what can I do to make sure that this car is going to go to the front? We had a bad night last night. I need to just try and get that out of my head and focus on trying to get past the 88 car and stay as far ahead of him as I can, and hopefully he has a little bit of bad luck too, and then you're right back in it. But obviously that didn't end up happening. But that's the mental game for these guys is just crazy. Like, I saw it crewing for Matt, like, just when things get tight, it weighs on them. Like, it's stressful, that's for sure. But
I want to give a shout out too to Timmy Fuller for winning that Thursday one.
Yeah.
What an awesome guy.
You know what I love about Timmy is there was a meme a while ago. It went back. It was a Tim Fuller starter pack, which was a Kaiser hat, Marlboro Reds, and a Bicknell T-shirt, I think, or something like that. But it was hilarious. But I don't know why. I think they should be using his nickname. Nobody uses it. The Empire Executioner.
That's pretty epic,
why don't they use that? I love that nickname.
It doesn't. I will say, even though it's alliteration, it doesn't necessarily roll off the tongue super well.
I know,
but I mean, 5 wins in Charlotte. Good on the guy. Still showing up. Still having a great night. Obviously, we talked about Matt winning on the Friday night, and then it all comes down to Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
Friday night, you mentioned the World of Outlaws, the sprint cars. Carson Macedo. One of my I picked gravel at the start of the year, and that's obviously a pretty easy pick to make in that series.
Yeah.
But you got to give a lot of love and credit to Carson Macedo all season long, trying to keep the fight going to gravel. And I know in the end it wasn't super close, but he's still showing up, making it interesting. The gravel obviously finishing 4th didn't really help Macedo as much as he needed to. But to go out there, lead 21 laps, and score max points on that night, or at least in terms of winning the feature and scoring the most points in the feature, you got to give Carson credit for never giving up.
Yeah, 100%. And then the Carson and the JJR guys, they busted their asses just as much, or I mean, if not harder than the big game guys to try and close this thing in and try and steal it. But the 41 was just the back half of the year, especially, was just on fire. It seemed like they could do nothing wrong, and when they had their bad nights, it wasn't detrimental bad night.
Yeah, and we talk about the Friday night results. I think we should talk about the late models too, because again, another driver trying to make it kind of close, trying to make it interesting. Bobby Pierce goes out and wins Friday night. Brandon Shepherd finishing 6th, obviously, again, doesn't really help. I mean, what a drive from Shepherd though too, because he started 14th, so he made it 8 spots. So that's the kind of drive you need when you're a points leader and you're trying to minimize the damage, right?
Yeah. It was the late model feature on Friday was wild. Bobby Pierce and Mike Marlard were just absolutely throwing haymakers at each other, and it was crazy to watch. And then another thing, the bad luck strikes for Nick. The 9 car breaks her rear end. That's how fast it can go. You can go from cutting the points lead down half the night before to a mechanical failure, and you're out the next night. So, which, I mean, you see a lot of, which we're going to talk about in the next one, another parts failure. But these guys are getting to the end of the season, and these parts are getting worn out. Sometimes it's inevitable. No, fuck, can't talk. Anyways. It's going to happen. Like, parts fail. Nothing lasts forever. So you definitely see a little bit more of that at World Finals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the end of the season, that grind, that wear and tear. It really is a test and a showcase of these teams' maintenance. And, in the time that I've had the chance to spend with you and your crew when you're working on Bowman's car and the stuff I've watched, just the amount of maintenance that goes into, the level that Bowman's at, where he's running a 360 weekly at Oshweekend and doing some tour races with the ESS and SOS and some of the tours that we have here in the Northeast for 360 racing. I mean, when you're doing the World of Outlaws and now suddenly your schedule is 60 shows or whatever, right? That's where you see the folks that have the time and the energy and the budget to keep up on the maintenance. That's where they really shine, and that's what can make or break a championship weekend getting into a Saturday night, right? Yeah,
that's the biggest thing, especially as a crew member, is making sure your maintenance is like prioritized and it is thorough, and you're checking everything over twice, 3 times. At the end of the day, it's somebody, as a crew guy, it's somebody's life somewhat on the line. If you fuck up and forget to do something, or you miss something and you never wanted to, but things happen. But yeah.
Absolutely. So we get to the Saturday night. Where do you want to go? Do we want to go Super Dirt Car Series first, World of Outlaws? Because I think pretty much everything stayed the same heading into Saturday night, right?
Well, actually on Friday, the 2, David Gravel did clinch the championship on Friday for the sprint cars. So he was going into Saturday just keep the car together and try and maximize positions and, try and win, obviously. But, it was that deal was wrapped up. And that race was really good. Sprint car race was awesome.
Sunshine leads them all.
Yeah, Sunshine from the front, which I ended the Outlaw year with a high limit winner.
Yep.
Just going to say that. But... But obviously, before even all the sprint car action started, we had Gio upside down in the fence before the green flag even went, which was another, again, parts failure. Just, it looked, for me, what it looked like, they didn't get the clear shot, but it looked like the rear end tube snapped on the 18 when he got up in the gas going down the front stretch and lost the left rear wheel and went for a ride.
Yeah, rough ride, obviously a little bit scary. To set the tone, final race of the year, and you're seeing stuff like that go down, you're kind of, I'm sure it's a little off-putting, but that's why I talk about race cars and I don't really sit behind the wheel of them all too often, because my stomach would be turning. Like, I'd be like, all right, well, maybe last race of the year, I don't need to run. I'll tap out. Like, if you're David Gravel, he's just like, you know what? It's a sign. I got it in the bag anyways. But, Gravel did not just mail it in. I mean, he tried his damnedest. Ended up, P2, I think, right? Ahead of Macedo.
I think so, yeah. Or he might have third, actually.
Oh, no, I got it here. Yeah, he was P2. He went 7th to 2nd. Macedo finished 3rd. Ryan Timms, Brian Brown round out your top 5.
That's another guy
for
I'm
the final run.
very impressed with this year, especially in the latter part of the year. Ryan Timms, he's been getting a couple different rides and running up front with these guys, which, I mean, he's coming from the midget side of things. And getting in a win car, you know, he had a bunch of 360 starts, but he's really getting into the 410 stuff now, and he's very impressive is what I'll say so far about him.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like it's been a good audition for him, right? Obviously, you want to talk a little bit of silly season stuff maybe towards the end of the year, but
Yeah.
you know, if I'm an owner and I can put the funding together, or you know, we can work out the deal to make whatever happen to get Ryan Timms in a race car, I think he's definitely worth taking a chance on.
I think so. Also from Saturday, I mean, there was a lot in the sprint car stuff too, but I'll talk about the late models. I feel like had a little bit more of this. But was tires going soft or getting holes or just absolutely blowing up? There was a bunch of right rears in the sprint car feature that just let go, and then the late model guys were cutting down tires like crazy. From the shots I seen on Dirt Vision, it looked to me like they were blistering them bad, and I think maybe these guys went with a little bit of a softer compound on the tires, and they were wearing them out too fast and just losing them. At least that's what I saw on Dirt Vision, but you never know. Like that's a big thing. Like guys, they try to keep their tire choices secret. Like we did it. I've done it before. You tape up the compound with some duct tape so people can't see when they're walking by, and you hope, I guess. Like,
so from your standpoint too, was it something that changed with the racetrack itself, or was it maybe just the teams getting aggressive on that final night, where it seemed like Saturday night it seemed to be much more of an issue than any other night, obviously, right?
I think it's just a combination of the 3 days and having so many cars on the track. Like you can reprep a track, but it's still going to be a little bit more abrasive than it was the night before. So I think it was kind of just...
Rubber's not going anywhere, right?
No, yeah. Like I think it was just the amount of cars and the amount of laps that were on the track, and it's just the way it is. Like these tracks will eat tires, some of them. Like it's absolutely crazy. A lot of these guys run right rear night and then it's done. So yeah. I think that was the problem there. I think they were just chewing tires up, and that's why they were going soft. But yeah, World of Outlaws late models. That final night went to Chris Madden. He won it over RTJ and Mike Marlar. Lots of controversy. We're going to talk about it.
Lots of controversy. Let's get the beef opinion here. Let's see.
Well, I was at
breakdown.
So I was at my buddy Porter's house with a couple buddies last night watching it, and from what I saw, I mean, you can't say that Madden wasn't a little aggressive all weekend. Like he was definitely getting it in there and like throwing his car around, which I mean, like that's racing. People do it. Can't always be the nice guy, you know. But from what I saw in the Saturday night feature, Madden on the first lap they went into 1 and 2, and he got up into Bobby, and Bobby had to lift for him. And then on the second lap, he shoves RTJ's left rear quarter panel, gets him lowered up, and goes by and takes the lead. And like I don't know, it wasn't too dirty, but it was definitely like he knew what he was doing. He gave him a shot to move him out of the way so he could get the lead, because he knows that passing's at a premium. If there's no way he's gonna get, well, you might get around him, but it's definitely a lot harder when you're racing and not trying to move him out of the way. And then RTJ went after him a couple times, got up to him, tried to spin him out. I forget what lap it was, but it was probably about mid-race. Tried to spin him out in 3 and 4, didn't get him all the way around. And then they get to the end of the feature. Victory Lane comes out, and they did it off to the side of the championship stage. And we were waiting. We're like, oh, he's got to do something. Like, something's going to happen. So Madden didn't say anything about it in his interview. They go to RTJ. He says, I think they're going to Panoia is the racetrack they're going to next. And he said, if he's there, we're going to take care of it then. So I was like, oh, here we go. Like, make sure to tune into that race. But
well, you know what it is? It's the fact that they're this late in the season, right? And you know, if you're mad and you're feeling the pressure, you want to get a win, you want to get on the board. Yeah. I'm sure if we're talking about this, you know, like does this move get made in May or June? Probably
no,
not.
But the problem is too, like Madden had health issues and got out of the race car. Then when everything went down with Ricky and Ricky went to Kohler Motorsports, they hired Madden as the crew chief. So they were together for, I think it was 3 or 4 months, won the Lucas title, and now they go out and race each other like this. It's like, was there bad blood from the Kohler Motorsports thing, or like, what is, who knows, or was it just like Madden rubbed him the wrong way? I don't know. But then they went for the pictures, and RTJ said some words to him, and security had to come, and it was interesting victory lane. That was for sure.
It's the crew chief driver relationship. It's been on display before. It's not always the smoothest marriage that goes around out there, right? So you never know what could have happened. Like you say, obviously Madden felt the need to race him a certain way, and he chose to do that, and he came out on top. But there's no question that he was, I'm not going to sit here and say crossed the line, but he was right up on that line, and obviously in RTJ's mind, a line was crossed, and he feels the need that he might have to go and handle it, right? Which he's got every right to go and do. But kind of one of those weird nights for the late models where the championship guys, for one reason or another, they didn't really show up to steal any podium spots or put any pressure on, right? Like Brandon Shepherd had a great drive going 14th to 9th, picking up some spots, right? But
Bobby was rolling until he got a flat, but just after that, he couldn't get the car to go. Like that happens sometimes. You put it on a different tire, and the car just mellows out, doesn't want to go anywhere. So, but yeah, he definitely gave it a good shot. Like he was moving. Like he probably would have finished in the top 5, I think, Bobby, if he didn't get the flat. But it wouldn't have been enough for him to steal the championship away from Bishop, I don't think so.
No, right? And then as far as the Super Dirt Car Series goes, I think it was 30 points that Williamson was up on Shepherd. So
yeah, I think 36 or something like that.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So he, was comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We saw what comfortable gets you sometimes. Like Shepherd had what we thought was a pretty comfortable margin in 15 points going into Thursday night, and that got erased. But Williamson did exactly what he needed to do to go out there and now be a 2-time Super Dirt Car Series champion.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, ran the perfect race, just bide your time, don't over push the car, like just keep it straight and keep it together and make it to the finish line. That's all you need to do. And Shepherd was okay. He wasn't like set the world on fire. So it was pretty much over. Once the race started, like it wasn't. The track was weird on Saturday too. Like it would feel like it would get rubber, and then all of a sudden the rubber would kind of go away a little bit, and they would start passing a little bit, and then it would come back. It's so you can never know what the track's gonna do. You just gotta feel it out and see if you can make it there.
Yeah, exactly. So in the end, we've got Williamson winning the Super Dirt Car Series title by 33 points over Shepherd. We've got Brandon Shepherd winning the title by 38 points over Bobby Pierce in the late models, and David Gravel handedly winning the sprint car title by 80 points over Carson Macedo. At the start of the season, if I told you it was Gravel, Brandon Shepherd, and Matt Williamson, was that what you would have predicted?
I don't think I would have predicted Bishop. I think I would have said Bobby for the late models at the beginning of the year, which, I mean, without that whole tire deal, that's probably what we would have been talking about. But yeah, I mean,
what was with the tire deal? What did the points? There was a penalty points wise, right? That went down.
Points penalty and fined, I believe, and he might have had a couple of race suspension. I'm not 100% sure, but there was definitely points taken away. I know that he had to dig himself out of a points deficit, but he did a pretty good job.
Well, exactly right. Like I'm looking at the late model points right now, and I'm seeing a 38 point gap.
Yeah.
And
it was definitely a lot more than 38.
Yeah, and both drivers made 41 starts. Mm-hmm. But then when you look at the actual results here, you got Bobby Pierce credited with 14 wins to Brandon Shepherd's 3.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And again, when you factor in a points penalty and everything else that happened, it probably makes sense that this is the way it shook out.
Yeah.
But I still think it almost should have been closer. Right? 28 top 5s. Even Pierce, right? Pierce beats Brandon Sheppard in top fives by 5, 28-23. Yep. Now, Sheppard has 35 top 10s to the 33 Bobby Pierce top 10s. Mm-hmm. But again, you throw in that points penalty, but it still feels like this was like Bobby Pierce has got to be sitting there just kicking himself, right? Like,
yeah.
What more could you have done?
I did nothing because he finished second. That's all he could do. Like, it was maybe 38 points. I mean, that's one more Brandon Sheppard bad night and you good night away from the championship. So.
Yeah, and this kind of was a story that I was following too in terms of the Super Dirt Car Series, because all season long, obviously Williamson had a better year. Like, I'm looking at, you look at the Super Dirt Car Series standings at the end of it. Yes, Williamson ends up winning the championship, but this was a deserved title. 8 wins, 14 top 5s, 17 top 10s, and 19 features. He had his couple DNF issues, whatever, through earlier in the season, and that really had him chasing Sheppard all season long. Now, Sheppard did beat him in top 5s by 1, 15-14. But I feel like when there's a win discrepancy of 8-1,
it's a big. That's big.
Like it's like it should have been obvious. There shouldn't have been a question going into this weekend that Williamson.
It should have been like, well, Matt's got it locked up, but that wasn't the case.
And that's what Williamson, he kind of bitched a couple of different times about it, and I kind of have a hard time busting his chops about bitching for it because, again, we're in a racing series. Winning is supposed to matter.
Yeah.
And 8-1 should give you
be
more
a
than enough margin, right?
You would think.
But I'm hesitant to say the points need to be overhauled, because if you go too heavy into the world of wins matter more than anything, you end up in NASCAR. And we saw it today. We got a Mickey Mouse champion today.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, Joey Logano is a Mickey Mouse champion.
Yeah.
Like,
can't say I disagree.
Was out. He was out, and you look at his stats. He was the 17th best average finisher all season. Or that was his average finish, was 17. 17. Yeah. It was like, imagine you get a really crappy division in football, and somehow the team that wins the division is less than 500 on the year, and then they go and win the Super Bowl. That's what you saw today in Cup Series. And I don't think any of us who follow dirt racing and are fans of dirt racing want something like that.
No.
You don't want a series that runs 8 months, 6 months of the year be decided because somebody got hot and won the last 4 out of 5 races, unless they were close on the points. So,
if they were consistent enough to be there and then won their way in, then that's a different story. But just to win one at the end and you have a shot at the whole thing is come on.
Yeah, so as much as I can respect what Matt has to say in terms of wanting maybe some reform to the point structure, I also counter and look at the World of Outlaws, which use pretty much the same format, I believe, as the Super Dirt Car Series. Yep. And David Gravel wins it by 80 points. Well, he had 15 wins to Carson Macedo's 12. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I know Macedo had a few more top 5s, but Gravel has more top 10s.
The big thing, too, with them guys versus the SDS is just the sheer amount of races. There's a lot more opportunities to win or have really bad nights and not be as consistent. So, you look at this, SDS only ran 19 features for the entire year.
Gravel won the title winning 66 races.
Yeah, so it's it's just a huge difference in the amount of races that are points-paying races towards that end of the year. But I definitely get what they're saying, and maybe there needs to be something looked at a little bit just to, I don't know, try and shake it up a little bit. But you also got Matt, it's the Matt and Matt show. They're up here. They
separated themselves.
Yeah, everybody says it's the top 3 in the Northeast is Matt, and Stu. But, I mean, Stu's obviously got other commitments with NASCAR, so he can't run the series full time, or the points would be probably even more shooken up. But, so points-wise, I think they could look at it. There's always room for improvement. But I think it's probably going back to what we originally started talking about, was guessing at the beginning of the year who you thought was going to win. Shepard definitely wasn't. I don't think I was going to pick, especially being in this Longhorn factory team, which obviously now he's done there. No longer the driver of the factory team for Longhorn. But then you got gravel with Brad leaving for High Limit, and everybody's saying, well, this is gravel's championship to lose. And
I said it back in February. I was like, when we were making picks over on the Sod Spot, I was like, how do you not think it's gravel's championship to lose?
I definitely thought for sure it's his championship to lose, but like, you're still, just because Brad left, there's still a lot of talent left in that roster. Look at Donnie. Donnie was running second in points for most of the year. I mean, he ended up third, but he was getting hot. It was the Donnie of before. Like, he was just out there running and just making moves and being consistent, getting wins, and it didn't work out in the end. But he probably had David a little bit worried, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I was very critical of gravel at the beginning of the year because he kind of got out of the gate slow, right? Like, the first couple races, like down in Florida, I think he picked up one win, but like, I was expecting him to run away with it. Like 15 wins on the year in that series is still very impressive and very respectable.
Oh, yeah.
There's still plenty of talent that was in that field. There were still guys who were coming over from High Limit to take some wins away from what these guys could have got at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like 15 out of 66, like I feel like gravel could have been at 25. If you told me gravel won 30 out of 66 starts in the World of Outlaws, I would have been like, yeah, you know what? That checks. That checks. But maybe that's a good sign for even going forward to next year, where it's like, okay, maybe Macedo has something where he can kind of take the fight to him. Maybe a guy like Gio takes another step next year and closes that gap. Maybe it's Sheldon, right? Maybe it's Michael Kofoid, right? There's so many guys that, said, hey, we're still here too. They're waving the banner as Outlaws regulars, right? So,
yeah, a lot of them guys, like, they just, if they can get a little bit more consistent, like, especially Sheldon, like, he won a lot of races, but he also didn't finish a lot of races. So that's where he's got to just try and find that happy medium, and he definitely could be up there giving David a fight next year.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So, where do you want to go now? Do we dive into the High Limits? Because they've obviously made some news with their 2025 schedule. And
first big series to release the schedule. I think it was 15 new tracks on their schedule for next year, which I love to see. I mean, there's definitely some questionable racetracks that they went to this year, and it's nice to see them, get away from some of those and try out some other ones. I mean, starting off the year in Vegas, that's pretty pretty sick. I mean, especially with the High Limit, high roller deal, like being in Vegas. And I like what they did is the Las Vegas weekend is in conjunction with the NASCAR weekend, and the Texas dates are in conjunction with the race in Texas for NASCAR, which gives Larson the opportunity to run, a couple more races than what he did this year.
Yeah, and they also are ahead of that crazy month of May that's going to come up for Larson. Obviously, he's going to attempt the Indy 500 again, which kind of has me worried about Ransomville, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of finally, we're Niagara boys. We finally got a High Limit date kind of close to us at the Big R, May 16th. That's super fun. Obviously, that's going to be a topic we dive into a lot on the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. But for me, I'm thinking like, okay, cool. High Limits are going to come here. There's no way that Larson's running Ransomville because that's got to be, I'm pretty sure that's the weekend that they're qualifying for the Indy 500.
I think so, yeah. I was looking at that too, which, I mean, it's a bummer Kyle probably won't be able to run that, but it's still cool to have a 410 wing sprint car series so close to our area. It's cool for anybody. Like, if these guys come right to your backyard, like, and you're a fan, like, you gotta go see these guys. Sometimes you don't get the opportunities to go see them, you gotta capitalize on the
obviously at Dirt Beers too, we have kind of fans of the page from all over that are tracking this and seeing what's going on. But for us Canadian fans, like, this is, one of those dates that's the closest opportunity that we're going to get to go and see a 410 race, right? So it's pretty cool. Obviously, Utica Rome the next night as well. That's kind of nice and close for us too. But what else stands out to you on the high limit schedule? I mean, one that jumped out to me is Skagit. That's another super fun one for our friends on the West Coast. A lot of people who grew up in Vancouver and kind of that area of BC and even some of parts of Alberta, it's really not that far for them to go to Skagit and go check out 410 racing.
Yeah, it's nice they have two little like the beginning of the year they have that little West Coast swing and then they have another one. So they get out there twice, a couple different racetracks, which is nice. And then they have good runs through PA. They go to Texas a bunch, the schedule is actually very laid out across the country nicely. Like they're gonna hit up most of the big name tracks and a couple of the lesser known tracks. Get them out, get big crowds in to come see these guys race.
Yeah, and I did see that Friday, August 15th, they still have TBD.
Yeah, I did see that too. So and we'll have to wait to hear.
Yeah, because that looks like they're in the middle of like a California swing at that point. So I'm like, I wonder where that date's going to end up.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's an interesting one for sure.
It's hard to say.
But yeah, because, I like, especially with California, is like a lot of facilities are drying up. Like we just saw, on the asphalt side of things, Irwindale's closing down. Yep. Obviously, auto clubs have gone away. So California is not necessarily the kindest state to racetracks these days. So I'm like, I wonder where else they've got lined up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, outside of them, they do a very good job on their social media side with announcements and all that stuff and keeping people guessing all the time, which is cool. I like to see that out of a series, not just this is the schedule, we'll be here, and then there's one or two race day posts and then that's it.
Yeah,
they keep the fans engaged, which is nice. But now we're talking about High Limit. This was their first full year as a series, national series. What do you think, Jonathan? I'll let you go first. What did you like that you saw? Maybe what did you see that you think they could improve on? Just your opinion on that.
So I thought overall the presentation of the series was really well. I thought, again, engaging social media, I thought that was really nice to see. I liked at first, early in the year, that they were kind of chippy and there was almost like a rivalry against the World of Outlaws. That kind of seemed to fizzle, and I think rightly so, because at the end of the day, rising tide raises all ships, right? If you go see a 410 race at your home track or you travel to a track, it doesn't matter what series it is. If it's a great 410 race, the next time the other series is there, you're probably going to at least look into maybe going to it again, right? So
yeah,
at the end of the day, I want success for both the High Limits and the World of Outlaws, right? So that's kind of what I took away from it in terms of how it was presented. I do think they got to work on the the qualifying procedures and trying to get these guys to take that little extra incentive to maybe drop back. Like, I get what they're trying to do with that sort of thing, but it just seemed like, nobody was really taking it all year long. So it was like, why even do it, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's something else better that you can do to maybe make that more interesting if you really want to play with that format. Maybe there's a couple races where you just invert the top, I don't know, just invert all the heat winners and they all got to start 14th or something like that. If you want to play with the format, you can get creative. Just, I think, don't leave it up to the drivers to make that choice, because I don't think there's a dollar figure that can replace the advantage of starting up front and having that track position to try and go win a race.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for their first year, I think they definitely exceeded what I thought they were going to do. There's always bugs. There's always going to be things to work on and fix. I think they ran on most nights, they ran a good show. They weren't there's always going to be some nights to get drug out, but it seemed like they were pretty good at moving the show along and keeping things going. Just the amount of support they had, I thought, was amazing. People were really getting behind, like you said at the beginning of the year, the Outlaw versus High Limit thing. And then that was just pumping up both series and getting people eyeballs on both series. So they did a good job at that, I think. And then letting it fizzle out at the end. I mean, you want to have somewhat of a rivalry, but you're benefiting off each other, so it's might as well just keep it mutual, you know. But I mean, they didn't go with other drama either. Like there's definitely a couple things, especially I think the biggest one was Brad at the scales at Outlaw Speedway when he went to go over the scales and an official never even looked at his weight. It was just his crew guy that said, "Yeah, you're good, go." Like as the owner of the series, that obviously doesn't look good, and he addressed it and everything. But it's just little things like that that can really put a sour taste in.
Yep, that was nice. Yeah, and that's all you want at the end of the day is you want engagement, right? I mean, you mentioned that the incident at Outlaw. Sweet still won the title by almost 300 points.
Yeah,
and I'm
wasn't
looking at
gonna
the
affect it.
statistics. I'm looking at the statistics. Like he had more wins than anybody else. Like Rico was close.
Yeah.
He dummied everybody in top fives. He dummied everybody in top tens. Like, Brad's just kind of a goat right now. Like he really is one of the top drivers, and we're privileged to see him race in a 410. Obviously, you can say what you want about him running the series. Does it have a little bit of a WWE feel? Maybe. But, like, I don't know. It's not like these guys aren't taking the fight to him. Corey Day, 8 wins on the year. Rico Abreu, 8 wins on the year. Tyler Courtney had 6, right?
Yep.
Like, there were guys out there going and winning. It's just that Brad Sweet's super consistent, and he doesn't have a lot of things go wrong in a season.
That's why he's a 6-time Outlaw champion.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Until somebody takes the fight to him. Of those guys, is there anybody, I mean, it's like probably way too early prediction, but is there anybody you see taking the fight to Brad next year?
I mean, you can't count out. I believe the top 3 are, I think, going to be the ones in the conversation for the title next year, right out the gate. You got Brad, Tyler, and Rico. They were, all 3 of those guys were just hot like all year. It almost didn't let up. You know, I don't know. In the top 5, you can't, with this deal they got with the charters. Like those top 5 teams now have charters, and I know there's been a lot of a lot of just say online about Brett Marks. Like he came out and said he doesn't know what he's doing yet for 2025, and he holds a high limit charter now. So does he come back? Does he sell the charter to another team? Like it's
lease it.
I don't know which way they can do it. Like, but it's just like it's great. I'm interested to see. I see in the 6th spot, Justin Peck finished 6th in points, high limit. You know, out of the boot ride now, going to the race car. I mean, he looked pretty good at World Finals in the 26. It's going to be hard to say. Maybe he jumps up there next year in that equipment and is like on fire. You never know.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of moves in silly season, which we'll cover in a little bit. But like, you just really never know who's gonna be hot and who's not gonna be hot.
What have you heard? I mean, I don't want to jump too early into the silly season topic unless you're ready to go there. But what have you heard about Corey Day? Because for me, Corey Day was a guy who really jumped off the page as somebody who hasn't had a chance to follow the national side of things as much as I wanted to. But there's a lot of hype around this guy to move even beyond sprint car racing.
Tons.
We saw him get a couple looks in the truck series, right?
Yeah.
You know, Kyle Larson's got a lot of praise for him in terms of his quality as a race car driver. So I sit there and I look at Corey Day as, sure, could he take the battle to Sweet? Yeah, if he decides that he's going to run the high limits full years, which I don't know what you've heard. I haven't heard necessarily what Corey's plans are for next year yet.
I seen I believe the 14 team did put a post out because Spencer Basin is now the full-time driver of the 14 car for the high limit season next year. But they also, apparently, for some high limit races, going to field a secondary car for Corey Day. So, as far as I know, Corey's pretty committed to running asphalt next season, but he is going to make scattered wing sprint car starts. So, it'll be cool to see him come back and maybe contend for some wins and really throw some wrenches and points and just different things going on. But, as far as I know, the 14 is going full-time. Spencer Basin left the CJB team, which, I mean, they were still to announce a fill-in driver for that seat. Maybe they look at it like we're talking about a guy like Ryan Timms for that car, but they haven't made anything official yet. But I'm interested to see too what Spencer can do in the 14. There's no doubt he did struggle a little bit in the 5 car, so maybe he can get in the 14. Corey had a lot of success this season with it, so let's see if he can back it up and keep that 14 rolling.
Well, let's keep rolling with the silly season stuff, because we mentioned Peck. I think you kind of got into his kind of deal already. I think we already touched on Shep going back to Rocket. I think we mentioned that.
We didn't mention it, no, but that's that's a rumor that I've heard from other podcasts like Dirt Tracker and all them guys. As far as I know, Shep has announced that he's going to run the Dome and the Wild West Shootout in his family B5 car, which, apparently it seems like the rumor is that it's going to be a Rocket chassis. So does that mean he's in talks with Richards to go back and run the house car again? But then there's also that they did a spoof thing, which people are like, oh yeah, it's not true, but maybe it is, that Josh Richards is coming back to run a part-time schedule, or maybe it's going to be a 2-car house car team at Rocket. It's so hard to, there's so much speculation about it, and a lot of this stuff gets ironed out at PRI, so maybe we'll see after that happens next month. Maybe there's some more solid information for that.
Yeah, and I feel like the other thing too is that I feel like a lot of it's got to come down to money, right? Like there's got to be a lot of dollar figures that are still getting worked out. Who's backing who, and obviously there is the element of going with certain chassis manufacturers. But another one that you've got on here is Mad Max. Where's Mad Max go?
Yeah, Mad Max out of the GR Smith 22. Senna's posted he's excited for 2025, so I'm going to assume he's got some plans in the works or lined up already, just hasn't announced it, but first year World Outlaw late models, he ran for Rookie of the Year. He didn't get it, but I mean, he had some moments where he was very good and very consistent, but it's hard to move from one discipline of racing to another discipline of racing, especially at the top level, and just go out there and be on fire. It's very rare that happens, but I mean, he definitely held his own in the late models, so I'm definitely interested to see where he goes in 2025.
Yeah, right. It'll be interesting to see. Another one you got on the list is Overton going back to a factory seat.
Yeah, so Overton takes over for Shep at Longhorn factory team. I'm not 100% sure what to make of it. Like, Brandon's good. He was in with his old team in the Wells chassis. Now he's going straight to just the normal Longhorn chassis. So it's going to be, there's always a transition period. You're never going to be like right in the car. You can be, but a lot of times you need a little bit of time to work it out, which, I watched the interview they had with Jeremy Smith from Dirt Tracker, and it seems like they're going to do some testing before they go to the Dome, and then they're going to start their year in Florida and just try to be as good and consistent as they can be.
And what kind of work from a crewing standpoint, what can really get done in the off season when you don't have that track time, that seat time to kind of adjust to things?
I can't speak from a super high level. I was never on national tours or anything, but off season you're just rebuilding, putting new parts on that are maybe better or updated, or just you're always constantly trying to update your race program, right? Maybe we can find a little bit of speed here, there, going back through the notes from last year, being like, well, we struggled here, but then we tried this and we went a little bit better, so we can build off that for next year. It definitely is harder for the teams up here that don't get that testing all the time, whereas the teams in the south, that where the wintertime there is no snow, they can go run a dirt track or whatever and do some testing in the wintertime. The biggest thing is just making sure your equipment is as top tier as you can get it, and make sure all your T's and I's, everything's crossed. Just make sure you're ready to roll out of that trail and the car be ready to go fast.
Nice. Well, I think we got one more thing on the list. Maybe on your side you got something else, but you put down here USAC drivers crossing over to the wing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of one of those unique problems that happen in the world of dirt racing, where you guys, or where us fans can kind of attach ourselves to a driver, attach ourselves to a series, attach ourselves to a certain competition level, and then the very next year it can almost be completely turned over. You don't see it happen in Big Four sports. You don't see it happen necessarily in asphalt racing like NASCAR or any of the road course racing series, stuff like that. This kind of is a unique thing in the dirt world, where if you're a driver, you're going to try to move up. You're going to try to take the best rides you can get when they get offered to you, when you can wedge yourself in there. And, you know, that ultimately kind of takes away from the series themselves. But at the same time, I'm always kind of looking on the bright side. It's like, okay, what kind of talent is this going to open the door for, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I forget who said it. There's a sprint car crew chief who said the 4 seat bolts are the easiest bolts to pull out of a race car. So your job is never, it's not like these like MLB, NHL, NBA guys that sign contracts. Dirt racing, a lot of these guys it's on a word and a handshake. There is no contract. You can be fired at any point in time if you're not performing to the way that your car owner thinks you should be. But, you know, the USAC stuff, it seems like USAC, there's the diehard USAC fans that love USAC and non-wing racing, but it just, I don't know, like it's losing, I don't know, it's kind of losing popularity. Like it's definitely more popular in south states than it is up here, and I mean West Coast it's pretty big as well. But like you look at Brady Bacon, I remember earlier in the year Dirt Tracker was talking about he was making more money in less starts in a wing car than he was in his non-wing car. So why wouldn't you focus more time on a wing car? Which that's what he's going to do next year. He's going to run full-time wing and try and make a career, you know. And then you got Justin Peck leaving the Buick 13, and now you got Dazen Pursley coming from non-wing racing to fill that seat. So USAC they lost 2 of their top guys, and like CV's coming to run more wing stuff. Like it's hard to get behind the non-wing stuff, at least for me, when I don't know who these guys are. Like I know the guys that are coming over here because they were running at the top of the USAC, but it's like once you get past the third, it's like you got to be a diehard fan to know these guys.
Yeah, it's either that or you got to be dialed into the pipeline, right? Like my kind of eyes for USAC racing, it's all about driver development, right? A lot of Toyota kids come from that program, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't remember now where Jade Avedijian is in her development.
But I think she's running a lot of asphalt right now, but she did run some USAC and midget stuff and like a lot more non-wing. I don't know if she has many wing starts, but she definitely was in the USAC program.
Exactly. Like that's a Toyota pipeline driver, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure was who she was aligned with to start with, right? And I think the other thing too that kind of hurts USAC is there's a huge disconnect to the IndyCar world. Right? I think when you go back and you listen to people who really championed USAC and Silver Crown and all that sort of stuff that was so legendary in the 90s, and, you know, either whether it was wingless on asphalt or whether it was wingless on dirt, you know, a lot of that stuff was tied into the fact that it was a developmental rank for guys to come up and be IndyCar drivers or champ car drivers, right? As much as it was for stock car guys, right?
Yeah.
And when you don't have drivers coming through the pipeline, you know, it doesn't shine the same light as a Kyle Larson making it and being this big star on a major platform being NASCAR and being like, hey, I came from this world of sprint car racing and it's still pretty cool and I'm going to invest time and money into it. And you are a fan of my NASCAR career, you should come and check out sprint cars.
Yeah.
I feel like USAC just doesn't have that person, that superstar to shine a light. They don't have the same coverage.
No.
They don't have a Dave Despain or a Robin Miller or any of these guys that used to report on it that were going from talking about Formula One or talking about IndyCar or talking about NASCAR and then being, USAC, this stuff's really cool, right? When you don't have that same spotlight on you, they're almost tasked with having to make a spotlight. And how do you make stars? How do you
it's hard.
do that? It's a really interesting challenge, right? And I think one thing you said that's kind of interesting, though, and it's got to be the point is, and this has kind of been the contention with the Chili Bowl, is that it's got to pay more.
Yeah,
they got to find money.
That's another thing. Yeah, like
you got to find budget.
These USAC races aren't paying anywhere near what these wing races are paying. It's like I said, you look at Brady Bacon. He had less starts in a wing car and was making more money than running his non-wing car. It's hard. Like they have to find sponsorship, or they have to find something to bring in some more money and pay a little bit more, and maybe it'll get more people interested, more drivers interested in wanting to run a non-wing car.
And then, I don't know, do you go to World Racing Group? Do you go to High Limit? Do you use your connections with a streamer like Flow Sports to align yourself with one of these other series? What if USAC, or what if, one of these midget tours kind of aligns themselves and they're the opening class that kind of tours with High Limit?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's so hard.
There's got to be options.
Yeah, they have to do something. Like they're losing everybody, so they just gotta sit down and try and take notes from these other series and figure out how they're gonna bring in more fans and more drivers. And I don't know,
they gotta find a way to get Christopher Bell out of a Joe Gibbs racing seat so he'll go run midgets again.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'd love to see that again, but we'll so it. Hopefully they get it figured out, because I enjoy watching non-wing cars. It's not as exciting to me as watching a wing sprint car, a late model, or a big block. There's
got to be something they can do, right? I mean, star power goes a long way. Big money goes a long way. There's options. There's things that I think will get done. It always swings, right? There's always a pendulum swinging back and forth of popularity in motorsports in North America, and it's just, unfortunately, USAC's kind of going through a bit of a downswing right now. But they'll find a way. They'll find somebody to hitch their wagon to, I think, here shortly. Yeah.
So, I mean, coming up, I guess, on some future episodes, we're gonna be we got the Dome right around the corner. So we're going to be covering some of the Dome stuff, just like we did with the World Outlaws, break it down night by night. For future, when we get the seasons going again, I know me and you have talked about doing, we're going to do kind of like a pool battle between me and you, and then we're also going to try and get the fans involved in it, do a dirt draft style kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to that, and then we're gonna get some guests on, talk to these people in the industry, the drivers, crew, like I said before, just people involved, and get their stories and get their takes on dirt racing today. Hopefully you guys like what you're hearing, and we'll just keep cranking out the episodes, and we're always open to feedback on whatever you think we can improve on or talk about. Just leave a comment about it, and we'll try and talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Rate, review wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, this is going to be up on YouTube. It's going to be wherever you get your podcasts in audio form as well. Something I want to do to kind of help you out, Beef, with, you've done such a great job growing the Dirt Beers page. If you're a photographer, if you're a racing photographer listening to this, get in contact with us and with Dirt Beers. And, if you've got some great shots that you want to share and, share your own platform, kind of try to grow your brand.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you come on board. We'll share your photo. We'll make sure that it's tagged. We'll make sure that you get the proper accreditation that you need.
Yep.
And, because at the end of the day, this started from kind of a meme page and a celebration of all things dirt. And now we're growing, and, rising tide raises all ships. Let's grow together.
Yeah.
So what's the handles again, Beef, for anybody who's new to it, or just maybe having this pop up on their Explore page or something?
So if you want to find the Instagram page, it's at dirt.beers. That's where we post. I post 6 days a week, 6 photos a day with different captions of stuff going on in the racing world. If you want to follow me on Instagram personally, I'm _beef_ on Instagram. But yeah, John, you want to shout out your handles too, where they can follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at Jonathon on air, Jonathon is how you spell Jonathan for the record. You can also check out the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. I have had about 99 episodes of that podcast that we've already done, hyper-focusing on Southern Ontario, a lot of Canadian, a lot of Northeast, a lot of New York State stuff. Had some great interviews in the past, covered some really cool events. That show is going to return in a little bit of a different format now that we're doing this one. Beef, you're going to be jumping in the co-pilot seat for that going forward. So if you want to hyper-focus in on all things Southern Ontario, Ohsweken, Merrittville, some of our close tracks on the other side of the border like Ransomville, some of the tracks a little bit more northern from where we are in the Niagara region like Brockville and Brighton, that's what we're going to be talking about a lot on that show. Hopefully you're down to come along for both, but if you want to focus in on just the big stuff, the big time auto racing, the big time dirt racing south of the border, of course this is the podcast for you. So thanks everybody who's checked it out, and yeah, let's wrap this up, Beef.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate everybody that's going to tune in and listen. You know, like we said before, just let us know what you think, and we'll be coming back at you with another episode in another week or so.